What's up, everyone? This is Ron DeFranco here, and welcome to a show called Stanley Cup Playoff Predictions. This is the series where we do some analysis and try to predict which teams are going to do well in this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, before I jump into the matchups, I just want to say that as the regular season comes to a conclusion, there are a few teams that surprised me and some that disappointed this season. I think that the biggest surprise this year is the Florida Panthers. They won 50 games for the first time ever, and I wasn't expecting them to do that. Back in 1996, the Panthers made a great playoff run, and that was the year that Scott Melby killed a rat in the team's dressing room during their team's home opener, and it was also when the tradition of throwing plastic rats on the ice started. They ended up losing to the Colorado Avalanche in the Stanley Cup Finals that year, but it was only their third season in the league. So the question is whether the Panthers will win their opening series for the first time in a quarter century. I will get to that shortly. The other good news story involves the Calgary Flames, who had just won their second Pacific Division title in the previous 4 years and 8th overall. And will the Calgary Flames make a deep playoff run? And I'm going to give you my thoughts on that as well. I've talked about the fairy tale seasons the Panthers and the Flames have had. Well, there's another team that had a fairy tale season, and that's the Montreal Canadiens, only their season turned into a pumpkin. The Habs are coming off a season in which they went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, only to lose to the powerhouse Tampa Bay Lightning. In quite the turnaround, the Habs finished dead last in the Eastern Conference and, in fact, the whole league. Even the expansion Seattle Kraken managed more wins than the Canadiens' total of 55. They went without star goalie Carey Price for all but a couple of games at the end of the season, and Shea Weber didn't play at all this season, and it might just be the end of the road for Weber. The other disappointment this year was the New York Islanders, because after 3 straight years in the Stanley Cup playoffs, including 2 conference finals appearances, they missed out on the party. And finally, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, who missed the playoffs for the first time since entering the league as an expansion team half a decade ago. This included their Stanley Cup Finals appearance in their inaugural season. They only missed the playoffs by 3 points, so you know what they say, there's always next year. Just one last thing before I get into my predictions. The format of the playoffs will be using brackets that allow for more division matchups in the early rounds. Okay, now on to the part of the show you came for. I'll get into the first round matchups starting in the Eastern Conference. In the 1-8 series, the President's Trophy winning Florida Panthers are the top seed and have guaranteed themselves home ice advantage for the entirety of this year's playoffs. The Caps are just 4 years removed from their Stanley Cup championship in 2018. The teams met 3 times this year, with the Panthers having a 2-1 edge in victories. But it was a really interesting series. The road team won every game, and all 3 games were decided by a 1 goal, with the opening game being a 5-4 overtime win for Florida. And despite this being a really close matchup, I'm predicting that Florida will sweep the Washington Capitals out of the playoffs in 4 games. And this will be a sign that the Panthers haven't cooled down. The next series involves the other division winner, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes, who will host the Boston Bruins. Coming into this first round, Boston has won the previous 5 series involving the 2 teams, and that includes the first 2 series when the Canes were previously the Hartford Whalers. This year, the 2 teams had met 3 times, and it was all Carolina. They shut out the Bruins twice and allowed Boston just 1 goal in a 7-1 victory. Every year, there's at least one upset, and I'm going out on a limb to say that today I will make a crazy prediction. I think that Boston will win the series in 7 games. In a series that all of Eastern Canada will be watching, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Toronto Maple Leafs will square off in the playoffs for the first time ever. The Bolts have won 2 consecutive Stanley Cups and are looking for the three-peat. The Leafs, well, 1967, enough said. The two teams met 4 times splitting the season series, and both teams have convincing wins over the other, and the home team had lost every game. And I'm predicting that the 2-time defending Cup champions will prevail in 7 games against the Leafs, adding to Toronto's playoff futility. They haven't won a series since 2004, and that's 18 years. And the last matchup in the East will feature the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers in the first round as well. The Rangers are the 4th seed, while the Penguins are number 7. These two teams have a lot of playoff history, and this will be the 8th series featuring these two teams, with Pittsburgh winning 5 of the previous 7 series. Although the Rangers are the higher seed, they missed the playoffs a year ago, and I think Pittsburgh could have had the upper hand, and I'm predicting that the Pens will prevail in 6 games. Now, I will turn my attention over to the Western Conference. First up, we have the top seed Colorado Avalanche and the Nashville Predators. This is the 4th time that Colorado has finished first place in the West. The previous times were in 1997, 2001, and 2021, and the Preds narrowly edged out the Vegas Golden Knights for that final playoff spot in the West, and the Avs and the Preds have met once before, and Nashville won that series back in 2018 in 6 games. Even though Nashville had the upper hand going 3-1 in the regular season, one win went to overtime and another to a shootout. It was actually Colorado that had the most convincing win, and that was a 6-2 win back on November 27th. I'm predicting that the Avalanche will win the series in 6 games. And the other division winner in the West will be the Calgary Flames, and they will take on the Dallas Stars. This will be the 3rd time that we will see a series featuring the two teams. Dallas had won both previous series, including 2 years ago in 2020, and during their tenure as the Minnesota North Stars back in 1981. This season, the two teams met 3 times, with Calgary winning 2 of them, and the Stars' lone victory came in overtime. And another odd thing is that this is another series where the home team lost every game. I'm predicting a 7-game series in favor of Calgary. Next up in the West is the St. Louis Blues Minnesota Wild series. This is the 3rd time that these two teams will square off in the playoffs. Both teams have split the previous 2 series, and Minnesota earned a 6-game series victory in 2015, while St. Louis earned a 5-game series clincher in 2017. But each game has a story. The first win was in the Winter Classic, and there aren't going to be any outdoor games during the playoffs, while the other 2 wins were in overtime, and playoff OT is in 3-on-3. So expect a close series, but my prediction is that the Blues will win the full 7 games, and who knows? As expected, the Edmonton Oilers will compete against the Los Angeles Kings. This is the 8th time overall, and the first in 30 years since 1992 that we get to see a series featuring these two clubs. Edmonton won 5 of the 7 previous series, and 2 of which ended with the Oilers en route to the Stanley Cup Championship title. These two teams faced each other 4 times this year, with Edmonton going 3-1. It was a close series, but I'm predicting that Edmonton will win the series in 6 games. And that's the end of my first round Stanley Cup playoff predictions. So, what do you think of my predictions? Do you have different opinions? And if so, tell me in the comments. And thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next round.